Picture yourself standing in a store. You spot a price tag. It reads $19.99. Instantly, some part of your brain files it away as being in the teens. Now, you know the real price. You've known this trick for years, right? You've probably even said out loud to a friend, it's basically 20 bucks. But here's the thing. Even while you might chuckle at the tactic, that tiny, fleeting feeling of relief, it is almost impossible to turn off. $19.99. It just feels lighter than 20. It feels safer. Your brain relaxes. And while that relief is incredibly tiny, it is entirely real. So why exactly does this feel cheaper than $20? Why does a 1 cent gap feel so emotionally massive? Is it nothing more than a cheap marketing trick? Because let's be honest, you already know all about charm pricing. You know the store wants your money, so why does your brain keep falling for it?
You might think the number just looks better, or perhaps you assume that since everyone knows the trick, it doesn't actually work on a smart shopper like you. But the real reason is far stranger. To truly understand this illusion, you have to look at what is actually happening inside your head. Here is the hidden truth. A single 1 cent price difference can completely change how a price is mentally categorized, even when the buyer consciously knows the real amount. And no, this is not a failure of your intelligence. It's not a lack of financial awareness. It is literally a measurable, physical glitch in how your brain automatically reads numbers from left to right. Your eyes hit the 1, your brain registers a 1, and boom, the magnitude feels anchored to that first digit before the rest of the numbers even have a chance to register.
Crucially, this left-digit effect works even on people who know exactly what a retailer is doing. Knowing the trick does absolutely nothing to stop it from working on your brain, because this fast, automatic processing is a deep structural feature of how your mind encodes magnitude long before conscious logic ever gets a chance to intervene. It operates entirely beneath the level of your conscious awareness, quietly shifting how large or small a number feels. Behavioral economists call this the left-digit effect. It's a behavioral pricing phenomenon where the brain encodes the leftmost digit of a number first and fastest, heavily weighting its size before the rest of the digits are even read. Put in plain English, your brain makes a blazing fast, automatic first pass at a number. It grabs that very first digit and decides exactly how big the number feels based almost entirely on that starting point. Only later, a split second after, does the slower, logical part of your brain catch up to read the sense and apply actual reason. Take a look at $3 versus $2.99. In a foundational 2009 study, researchers Kenneth Manning and David Sprott tested this exact tiny shift. They gave people choices between products at slightly different price points and found that dropping a price by just 1 single cent measurably increased how often people chose the cheaper-seeming option. The shift in behavior was far larger than a 1 cent difference should logically justify. Under time pressure, a little distraction, or simple mental fatigue, your slower corrective brain simply fails to activate. You just see the two. This ties directly into what researchers Manoj Thomas and Vicky Morwitz called left-digit anchoring in a famous 2005 paper. This is the cognitive bias where your brain anchors on the very first number it sees, whether that's hundreds, tens, or ones, and then adjusts insufficiently for the remaining numbers. Your brain gets stuck on that first digit. It flat out refuses to let go. This echoes the broader anchoring and adjustment bias discovered by famous psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman back in the 1970s. You anchor on a starting point, and your mental adjustments from that starting point are simply too small to correct the illusion. But the timeline of this entire phenomenon holds a pretty surprising secret. Notice where the evolution of 99 cents actually starts: the late 19th century. You see, the origin of charm pricing did not actually begin in a modern psychology lab studying human behavior. It started in department stores and mail-order catalogs. It started in early Woolworth's 5 and dime stores. So why did they do it? While the 99-cent price ending actually started as an anti-theft accounting trick more than a century before anyone ever studied its effect on the customer's brain, late 19th century retailers used these odd prices to stop internal fraud. A price ending in a non-round number forced the cashier to open the register. They physically had to make change. This meant the register had to be opened, the bell would ring, and the transaction was officially logged, making it much harder for an employee to quietly pocket a whole dollar bill without ringing up a sale. The psychological benefit to your brain? That was just a total accident. Retailers noticed sales patterns shifted, and only much later did academic researchers isolate and quantify exactly why. So, does being a careful shopper protect your wallet? You budget carefully, you constantly compare unit prices, you relentlessly hunt for deals. Surely, this deliberate, conscious effort breaks the illusion, right? Think about your own shopping habits for just a second. Here is the totally counterintuitive twist. Being a more attentive, budget-conscious shopper does not make you immune to the left digit effect. In fact, in some studies, it made people more susceptible, not less. Research by pricing experts Eric Anderson and Duncan Simister in the early 2000s found exactly this. Your deliberate bargain hunting actually makes your brain far more vulnerable to this specific illusion. Price-sensitive, deal-conscious shoppers were often way more responsive to the 99-cent ending than casual, less price-aware shoppers. You actually fall into the careful shopper trap in 3 quick steps. First, you scan many prices to find deals. Second, you rely heavily on the fast left-to-right reading shortcut. And third, you skip the slow, deliberate arithmetic to save precious cognitive effort. Precisely because you are trying so hard to be an efficient shopper, your brain relies entirely on its absolute fastest system. Comparing dozens of prices requires speed. Speed forces your brain to grab only that leftmost digit. The correction, the slower arithmetic that would catch the trick, takes cognitive effort that a fast scanning brain simply skips. Your carefulness is exactly what the trick exploits.
And this identical left-digit logic governs your modern life far beyond simple retail price tags. Subscription apps display $9.99 a month instead of $10. Financial apps show interest rates as 4.99% APR. Even high-stakes salary negotiations often anchor around numbers like $59,000 instead of $60,000.
Consider $59,000 versus $60,000. The first number your brain reads completely sets the frame. Your brain processes the remaining digits as a mere correction to that very first number. They are simply not treated as equally important information. When you glance at your bank balance, your credit card statement, or a brand new job offer, the leftmost digit is doing massive, unfair emotional work. Not because you are careless with money, but because your brain is literally built to read magnitude the exact same way it reads a sentence, front to back, fastest at the start.
Which brings everything back to this tiny single number, 1 cent. You still know that $19.99 is basically $20. You have always known it, but knowing it and feeling it are 2 entirely different processes. They run at 2 completely different speeds inside the very same brain, and the gap between your conscious logic and your emotional reality is exactly 1 cent wide.
So here is the final question to ask yourself as we wrap up this explainer. Are you making decisions based on your mind or a century-old cash register? That single cent is the very same cent a shopkeeper started charging more than 100 years ago. It had absolutely nothing to do with how your mind works, and everything to do with stopping a cashier from pocketing a dollar bill. Yet that 19th century anti-theft accounting trick is still quietly, powerfully shaping the financial decisions you are making right now.